was speaking at a longevity conference and they were talking about how this idea of escape velocity and us being able to eventually age backwards faster than we're aging forwards. And the point at which we can do that is the point at which we can reach escape velocity and live forever. And they even had a mechanism through which this could be, and that the mechanism isn't too far off. And that mechanism is going to be.
My guest today is Anna Youssef, who is a Stanford and Yale trained psychiatrist, and she is doing something that most trained scientists do not do. She is marrying spirituality and science. She is completely into alternative medicines, but with a science background, and getting ready to do a mental health healing center that evolves medicines that maybe are not traditionally part of what you think of as a medicine. And if you've been watching this channel for a while, you know that I am very much into this with my out of body experiences with 5-MeO DMT. So we are going to dive deep into some very interesting topics. And if you are looking for new modalities that are coming out and ways to heal, this is the show for you. So Anna, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Lori. It's such a pleasure to be here with you today.
Oh, it is. This is my thing. Like, I love the spirituality, but when I can combine it with science, and I have said for a long time that we are on the cusp of changing everything about the way we heal. All the healing in the future is going to be frequency, vibration, light, energy. It's not going to be necessarily taking a pill. So I am super curious to kind of hear your thoughts about what you think about that.
Absolutely. Yes. I think that most likely it's going to be yes and a combination of everything. And that is what we want. We want the best of all the healing modalities. There's something so potent and powerful about medicines, right? Medicines do heal the body. It's true. There's many people who benefit, and yet not everybody, and their side effects. And for some people, it's not their first choice philosophically. They might not want to be an antidepressant, even if they have, severe depression. They're just like, philosophically, I'm opposed to this. I want to deal with it in a different way. And so I think you're exactly right that vibrational medicine and these other ways of elevating our frequency as human beings are becoming more and more potent, prominent, important in not just healing from mental and physical illness, but just for our own optimization, well-being, being happier, more joyful, more fulfilled in life.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Yes to all of that. How in the world did you get into a spirituality aspect connecting to science? That is not the norm.
It is not the norm. And, had anyone told me 25 years ago that I would be a spiritual person, I would have laughed. I was like everything but. I had a mother who was actually very spiritual, and my father was more of a scientist. He was a biomedical engineer and physicist. And I've always been much more like my dad. But then something started happening later on in my life, towards the end of my residency training, that started to put into question all of the things that I had learned in medical school and residency. Interesting spiritual experiences that made me think, how did that just happen? How do I explain that using the scientific model I've been taught? And I couldn't explain them well, so I had to expand my model. And that's when I started studying other models of understanding consciousness and the world, models like Kabbalah, which became a big part of my life, working with different shamans in South Africa, South America, working with people learning about Buddhist and tantric meditation practices in Thailand and recently in Bhutan, and basically expanding my capacity to understand what is healing and how do we understand the human experience in all of its varied vicissitudes.
So I'm curious, of all of the things that you have discovered, what part about the spirituality connected to science has surprised you the most?
I think, it's been a super interesting journey. And I think that the more science we can put beside a lot of our spiritual understanding of the world, the more powerful that our world essentially will be. So I don't think I've been actually that surprised by so much. I think, people say, has there been a lot of pushback? Sure. But I think maybe I've been more surprised as to how open people have been Yale has been very open about us working with Dr. Christopher Pittenger, one of the deputy chairs of psychiatry, to create a mental health and spirituality center, which we're in the process of raising funds for. So they were open and supportive of this. And more and more people are really interested to understand, what is the science? How do you understand scientifically what happens to us in the spiritual dimension? So I think that the world is ready right now for that merging. Whereas in the past, science and spirituality were strange bedfellows, and they were very discordant, and you couldn't really use them in the same sentence as you do now.
So true. Well, let's talk a little bit about the psychedelic aspect because I know that I've interviewed people who are connected to this, and there's a lot of science behind healing with different types of psychedelics like psilocybin, which are magic mushrooms. DMT has been studied by Dr. Rick Grossman quite a bit. So, how are you working with those types of substances in the mental health and healing modalities?
Absolutely. This is a tremendous interest area of mine, Lori, because not only do psychedelics offer a novel biological mechanism for treating some of our most treatment-resistant mental health conditions, for many people, they also offer a connection to spirit. And by virtue of that, it could be a gateway for spiritual experiences, possibility, enlightenment, etc., for many people. And so, um, in our country, the psychedelic that is legal is ketamine, and that's across all 50 states. So that's something that I have been using with some of my patients when medically indicated. And some patients, have overcome really powerful things, both within sort of their psychology, but for some of them also spiritually in their life. And it's enabled them to move forward. And I can talk more about specifics, but then now we are working on the legalization of psilocybin, and it is legal in several states or decriminalized in others. And so I have had patients do that as well. And then I've also had patients go to countries where other things are legal, such as um, ayahuasca and peyote. And so they've had those experiences where they've come back and then integrated it. And then there's 5-MeO DMT, which you and I spoke about. I've had patients go, and there's also obviously, as we know, a huge underground culture for a lot of these things. And so it might not be legal, but patients will find a way. You could never, as a doctor, recommend that, but you can certainly help them to integrate the experience after the fact, you know?
Yeah, that's for sure. Well, I'm curious to what your thoughts are since we both have used 5-MeO DMT for spiritual experiences and growth. And the DMT component is produced from what they understand in the pineal gland. And it is naturally produced in your body. Some say that there is a small, minuscule amount that is released at night, which helps us to dream and maybe lucid dream or leave the body at night to astral travel. And then it's also supposedly part of how the soul enters the body or leaves the body. So, in your research and what you've looked at, how does that relate to what I just said?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, that with ayahuasca, with 5-MeO DMT, and with a number of other medications as well, or these powerful plant medicines, DMT is one of the ways in which people can have their transformation. It is a different form, a different mechanism than any psychiatric medication presently offers. And so for some people, they have very transformational experiences that change how they see themselves, their identity, the world, and so many other aspects of their just being. And I think that, people say that there's lots that's been studied on DMT, the spirit molecule, as some call it. And, there's also individuals who are studying endogenous DMT production because you don't need necessarily a substance in order to activate your DMT. You could do it through breath work, you could do it through meditation, you could do it through a number of other practices. A meditation teacher, Joe Dispenza, teaches ways of endogenously activating your DMT. And I was just talking to a researcher who is studying endogenous DMT production. So both um, endogenously, naturally, essentially, and through substances, we can activate this part of ourselves that can have very powerful transformational consequences.
I love that because not everybody listening is going to want to run out and do these things. And quite frankly, as far as these medicines are concerned, I believe that they call to you. You don't just go and find them for without being called to them. And I'm certainly not advocating that people run out and do these things, but they are just something that it's worth thinking about or exploring if it's something that you're trying to do to help you go to the next level spiritually, because that's where I've found it has the most help for the for people. So what other types of research do you want people to know about that connect us to the spirituality?
Yeah, there's a ton, Lori. And so some of the most, basic research on this is how spiritual beliefs and practices actually help with numerous physical and mental health conditions. One of the most prominent studies is from Dr. Tyler Vanderweel at Harvard Center for Human Flourishing. And Dr. Vanderweel followed hundreds of thousands of patients over 20 years and found that church attendance significantly reduces suicidality. Very interesting. So it reduces, and not just suicidality, but also deaths by despair, which is overdose or suicide. And so the reduction was a five-fold reduction, which is very, very significant. But it's also interesting. The relationship is relatively nuanced, and not everybody benefits. Sexual minorities, individuals who are lesbian, gay, transgender, had the opposite effect. They did not benefit from church going, but the people who did, then they asked the question, what is it about church going that helps? Is it the community, the affirming beliefs, affirmative beliefs? Whatever it is, it's a very powerful, potent effect. And when they looked down, and actually examined it all, the number one factor was a moral prohibition against suicide that church going engendered. So one way or the other, church going does reduce suicidality in many demographics, but not all. So that's one interesting study. But also, having spiritual beliefs and practices improves quality of life with so many mental health as well as physical health conditions. And there's lots of data supporting that.
I love that. I love that you're saying this because for a long time, like we grew up in the, like through the 80s and then 90s, where spirituality was considered woo woo. It was considered fringe. You were a little bit weird if you were following these things or talking this certain way. And I love that they're finding through studies that this actually makes you more healthy and not less healthy. That's really, really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And there was a time when within my field of psychiatry, spirituality was seen as a sign of weakness. Sigmund Freud viewed religion and spirituality as an obsessional universal neuroses, essentially a crutch that the weak have to lean on because we can't, handle the fact that this is all there is. Right. So that was that time. And then Carl Jung, who was a contemporary of Freud, came in and actually said that the spiritual um, part of life was an essential part of the human experience and that we're born whole. And part of our goal in this world is to regain that inherent wholeness. And spirituality is one of the ways to do that. And then it was
I love
Albert
that you mentioned
Einstein.
those
Yeah.
because the reason I love that is because those were really early examples, but there were some later examples of people like Dr. Brian Weiss who really opened the whole door to past lives, reincarnation based on what he uncovered with evidential information. And I think it's really nice that science is starting to become a little bit more connected to the spirituality because we aren't these separate beings that just have a body. We have an emotional component. We already embody and marry science and spirituality innately just because of what we are as humans.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Completely agreed. That's exactly it. And I think that it's what you're saying. It's like we're reverting back to that which is already natural. And since the dominant paradigm for exchange of knowledge in our world is science, we need more science to support what we know spiritually or to help us to understand how certain spiritual experiences happen. And this is sort of the paradox, right? Because science is always looking for that which is reproducible, subject to double blind controlled trials, that which you can see with your eyes, hear with your ears. Whereas spirituality is the opposite, right? It's often so subjective, personal, transcendent, hard to reproduce, hard to duplicate, hard to subject to study. And that's why the science of spirituality is essentially a paradox, but such an interesting paradox and something so worthy of study and inquiry.
Oh my gosh, for sure.
Mhm.
Well, with all that you have uncovered, what do you think we are on the cusp of? What is coming that people can start to look forward to as far as what you're researching and what you're finding and where you see these trends going?
Yeah, I'll tell you the most interesting thing. So this is like more like futurism as opposed to, I mean, what I think I'll tell you futurism, but I'll also tell you within mental health. I feel like in mental health, what is coming is us adding the body and the spirit to our understanding of mental health, because right now we have the mind and the brain really, really well orchestrated. We have psychotherapy to treat the mind, we have psychopharmacology to treat the brain. And what's missing from our psychiatric paradigm is the body and the spirit. So what I see is a brain, mind, body, spirit, sort of all of them together, and much more integrative, comprehensive, holistic. I feel like that is where our profession is going. That's one thing. And as far as the coolest things that are out there, I was speaking at a longevity conference and they were talking about how, this idea of escape velocity and us being able to eventually um, age backwards faster than we're aging forwards. And the point at which we can do that is the point at which we can, reach escape velocity and live forever. And they even had a mechanism through which this could be, and that the mechanism isn't too far off. And that mechanism is going to be these little bots that go inside our arteries and clear the arteries in our brain, in our heart, and basically prevent the leading causes of death, including dementia, heart disease, etc. And these little bots are essentially going to do this and prevent some of the key, you know, drivers of death and therefore enable that. And so it's for us to live long enough until the bots are ready, and the bots are already being tested. These little
Well, I would
microbots.
imagine these are being,
Super interesting.
when I was a pharmaceutical sales rep, we would have a new drug that would get launched here in the US, and you'd find out it had been in Europe for like 3 years. Like this is the old news for
Yeah,
them. We're the
exactly.
last ones because it takes so long for everything to get through the FDA and all of the clinical trials and all of the red tape that it takes to get something to market, which sometimes can be a good thing, as we've heard from different vaccines that have been released or different medicines that get released too soon and pulled back off the market. However, this is really interesting because you're kind of talking a little bit AI, futurism, a little bit sci-fi when we start to talk about bots that we could put in. So we're talking about cellular level bots. These must be microscopic. What in the world are they? I mean, when you say a bot, I'm thinking of like some kind of a metallic metal thing, but I would imagine they probably wouldn't even be made of metal. Like what is this?
Exactly. It's a great question. And I don't know the mechanics of it, but I know that when I was speaking at a longevity conference with a whole bunch of brilliant people, all of whom have gone to many longevity conferences, that was my first. I learned about these bots, and so this is something that's in the works. How they're going to be made and the mechanism. I think there's probably a lot of information about it online. I don't think it's a secret, but I think it is the wave of the future, and I think that there's going to be medicine on a scale. And also, what you mentioned at the very beginning of our talk, vibrational medicine, frequency medicine, things that are able to alter our frequency and vibration, of giving us the vibration of a pill by getting the vibration actually without actually taking the pill. I feel like there's going to be things down the pipeline that you can't even imagine that right now seem like science fiction.
Yeah, and it's kind of like being in the 80s and getting call waiting. Never in our wildest
Yeah.
dreams could we
No.
have imagined a phone that you could take with you. I
Totally.
mean, like Steely Dan having a song, Ricky, don't lose that number, because you had to have a piece of paper that could be lost forever. Like technology is so different. And I would imagine that that's the same thing with science. And I've said for a long time that I believe that I personally will not age the way my parents are aging, that by the time I would get even close to their age, I'll probably be the age I want to be, which is I'd be 38. If it were up to me, I would look 38. I'd be physically 38. That was just such a great age. Or maybe people would want to be younger than that. And I have been pursuing anti aging for many, many years. And you and I had a very interesting conversation before we started this recording. And we started talking about a technology that we both have stumbled upon
Mhm.
independently. It's nothing I hardly ever hear anybody talk about this, but it's scalar technology. So
Mhm.
I'm curious because we don't take this lightly, especially when you're a scientist. Me, with my background with pharma, like I'm real careful about what I do because sometimes things come out before they're ready. But What is it about a technology like Scalar that drew you to that to wanted to use that for anti-aging?
Yeah, exactly. And for me, it was like I had a dear friend who does it regularly. And my dear friend, her name is Alita St. James. She had twins at 57. She's like all about anti-aging. She's like in her mid 70s, going on like 30. So I was like, Alita,
She
if this
had
is what you do,
twins at
yeah,
57?
yeah, totally. Yeah. So that's, I feel like that's another thing that's going to be the norm. Like right now, this, that, like you're like, wow, but down the road, that's going to be the norm. So like everything's shifting. And so the thing with that is Alita did this and I was very intrigued by her and she's a dear friend. And so I'm like, okay, so I'll go with you one day. And then I went and I felt so good afterwards. I'm like, okay, this is for me. So for me, I will try a lot of things. You know, my body is very versatile, very healthy. So I'm like open to all of these things and open to trying it and very curious and interested, but I know right away if it's good or for me or not. And this was good. So I've continued to go with Alita and continue to, I've enjoyed it. It's been very interesting. We talked about, I haven't seen like tremendous effects, like you mentioned, very concrete effects, but I
Yeah.
definitely feel very good. And that's an effect for me.
Absolutely. I mean, if you can
Mhm.
increase your energy and your
Yeah,
vitality, then you get more done during the day. You feel happier. You ward off illnesses. There are so many benefits to that that are not
exactly.
just about erasing wrinkles or something like that.
Exactly. Exactly. Hmm.
Oh my gosh. All right. So what else? What else for people that are watching? Like these programs are really sometimes full of information that they haven't gotten anywhere. And one of the things I really love about this is when I have a guest on, I like them to share some type of a little golden nugget, a piece of information that somebody can take and use in their life in a practical way that they would not have been able to have without watching a show like
Hmm.
this. So, what can
Yeah.
you share with people that you feel is your gold nugget?
Yeah, that everything is possible, that there is nothing that is impossible in this world. And that, the only thing that holds us back often is our own thinking. And that, miracles happen all the time. This is actually, so I've written one book on the science of spirituality, which, as you know, our dear friend Eben endorsed, not endorsed, but wrote my forward for. But then I'm writing another book right now on the science of miracles, with a miracle being defined as something highly beneficial yet statistically improbable. And the question of the book is, what can we do to increase the frequency of miracles in our lives? And miracles happen all the time. I have so many miracle stories to share in this book, of patients, of friends, personally, all kinds of things. And miracles are on a continuum with synchronicities, which are meaningful coincidences and things that happen that are like a wink of God in the world. And so I feel as though people should dream as big as they can possibly dream and know that anything and everything is possible. And it's only our thinking that holds us back from many things in life. So, and I understand, to actually get to the frequency of miracles is difficult, it's challenging, it's hard. You have to overcome a lot of stuff in yourself. You have to deal with the shadow. But that's where I like to take people, to that realm, and for them to work together with me to figure out, how do we get to a realm of miracles? What is a miracle for you? And as I said before, just to reiterate my definition, which is a secular definition, a miracle is something highly beneficial yet statistically improbable, right? So not impossible, but improbable. So it's something that's like to the end of the bell curve, and yet people do it: spontaneous remissions from cancer, aging backwards, all that's that. Babies at 57, people do that. And so it's like, you want that? Let's figure out what you need to do.
So, what is one tip that somebody can take that is brand new to this if they want to start to see more miracles in their life? Like, what's the first step somebody needs to take?
Yeah, then you ask the universe for it. God, the universe, whatever your definition or connection to source is, say, I would like to see more magic and miracles in my life. And then start to declare every day when you wake up, today's a day of magic and miracles, and start looking.
I love that. I have a friend that's his sign. He said everywhere I go there's magic and miracles. That's his signature. And of course, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy and the more you see it, the better you get at recognizing them, the more you will see for sure.
Mhm, mhm. Exactly.
Wow.
Exactly.
So you have such a diverse area of all these things that you're working on. How do you want people to find you, or what do you want people to
Yeah,
connect with you with what you're working on?
absolutely. Definitely. So I do a lot of different things, and I do psychiatry sessions in the states where I'm licensed. I do a lot of executive coaching all over the world. I am writing another book. I do a lot of workshops so people can connect with me on all of those things, whatever is of interest to them. And they can find me on my website, which is annayusim.com, www.annayusim.com. And I look forward to hearing from people. And thank you, Lori, for
Well, and
making
I
this
love that
possible.
because the other connection that you have that people may be familiar with from watching this channel is Dr. Evan Alexander, a friend of the
Mhm.
show. So intelligent. I know you studied different things with him. He endorsed and wrote a jacket cover comment from one of your books. Do you have anything that you're working on specifically with him right now?
Not currently, but what we did do is so his partner, Karen Newell, has a company called Sacred Acoustics, which is binaural beats for meditation. Yes. And so I studied those beats, those binaural beats called Sacred Acoustics in my practice with my patients, and we published a paper on that together. And so it just shows that the beats are very, very powerful and lead to positive psychological change. And that was shown in my patients, and we published it in the Journal of Nervous and Mental Disease. So that was a very fun project that we did together.
Can you give me a link so that I can put that in the
Definitely.
show notes?
Definitely. Yeah.
Because I'm fascinated with the binaural beats only
Yeah.
because I have heard people using them to try to leave the body for astral travel. And so it's
Yes.
like a
Yes.
spiritual portal, but I
Absolutely.
always get stuck in like I don't know which one to pick to get
Mhm,
started.
mhm.
And so sometimes
Yes.
there's
Yes.
that how do you decide what to pick kind of a thing.
Yes. Exactly. Exactly. And I think that you use your intuition for that, or you try one and then the other and then the other.
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, I knew that we had limited time today, but I am so appreciative of a conversation like this. You've given people places to go, things to think about, things to explore, discussion points they have with other people. I'm curious for the people watching, like what resonated the most for you in what Anna was talking about. I would love to hear about that in the comments. I think that would be super interesting. But Anna, I want to thank you so much for bringing a more left brain side to what are usually right brain conversations. Because when we start to do that and marry the two of them, then people can come together and it gives everybody credibility. And I just think it's just such an interesting place for you to be with the science and spirituality. And thank you so much for what you're doing to try and wake up the collective and heal the collective.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Lori. And it was such a pleasure. I loved getting to know you, and it was so great to be on this with you. And I look forward to next time.
Me too, me too. And thank you everybody for watching. Next up, check out this playlist of other NDE interviews. Please like and subscribe. It really helps this channel to grow so I can bring you more content. Thank you for watching. I'm so glad you're here.